we have another coach firing in the NFL. The Titans firing Mike Vrabel after 6 seasons.
But let's start this show with some breaking news where we spent a lot of time over the past couple of days. Another coaching change in the NFL. This time it is the Titans who have fired coach Mike Vrabel after 6 seasons in Tennessee.
By the way, are you learning on the air what I just heard in my ear, Taylor?
I don't. What was it?
I just heard your Vrabel is not returning to the Titans.
Will just literally, he was trying to mouth something to me, and I was trying to be respectful by not listening, but he was just trying to say that Mike Vrabel is fired.
Yeah,
fired.
That just happened. I mean, look at this happening on live, stream, Taylor.
Talk about a surprise start to the postseason, huh? A lot of coaches usually meet their end of their coaching gigs around the end of the season, but of all the coaches who were rumored to be fired or be on the hot seat, this move has surprised me the most. The Tennessee Titans have fired/parted ways with head coach Mike Vrabel. Now, this caught everyone in the NFL world by surprise, being that Vrabel has been one of the top coaches in the NFL really since taking over the Tennessee Titans. Vrabel has built an undoubtedly amazing culture in Tennessee among his players and the fan base. So for this move to happen now is extremely surprising. I mean, I'm sure if you went to any player that has spent time under Mike Vrabel and asked them about him, 90% of the time, it's most likely positive and it shows on the football field. Which makes this move all the more bizarre that the Titans would let go of a head coach like Vrabel, just like that, as if they grow on trees. With that being said though, in today's video, we are going to go over how big of a mistake this is for the Tennessee Titans as a whole, as well as the culture Vrabel has built in Tennessee, basically his tenure there, and what's next for him in his coaching career, because he will be a coach in the NFL, I guarantee it. With that being said though, let's get into it. Mike Vrabel was hired to be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans heading into the 2018 season. Vrabel at that point had been a defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans in 2017. Before that, he was the linebackers coach for 3 seasons with the Texans. Before that, though, he spent his early career as the linebackers and defensive line coach at his alma mater, Ohio State. He spent 3 seasons coaching for the Buckeyes. Vrabel most notably, though, spent a lot of his time as a player in the NFL, most notably with the Steelers and Patriots, winning 3 Super Bowls as a member of the Patriots and actually catching a couple touchdowns in those Super Bowls as well. Vrabel's first season in Tennessee wasn't anything special. The team went 9-7 and were 3rd in the AFC South. But in 2019, a string of playoff runs began to start for the Titans, finishing 9-7 again this time, but getting into the wild card where they beat the 12-4 New England Patriots, which so happened to be one of the last times that Tom Brady would wear a Patriots uniform. Their next game, though, was even more surprising, going on to beat the 14-2 Ravens, led by an MVP Lamar Jackson, until finally the clock began to strike midnight, losing in the AFC Championship to the Kansas City Chiefs, who would end up going on to win the Super Bowl that year. A lot of this was all helped by Ryan Tannehill's insanely insanity season, where he threw for 22 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions, which was also helped by a monster year by King Henry, rushing with over 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns. But what also helped as well was the emergence of a rookie wide receiver out of Ole Miss, A.J. Brown. Remember him, he's important in this story. The next year, though, the Titans made the playoffs again, finishing 11-5 and 1st in the AFC South. Despite that, though, they had an early exit in the wild card to the Ravens, and what makes this exit even crazier is despite making a huge run last year, all 3 of the offensive players I mentioned in the last season had a monster or equivalent season that year. Tannehill threw for over 3,000 yards, 33 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions. Derrick Henry rushed for over 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns. And A.J. Brown had another 1,000-yard season, combining that with 11 touchdowns. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, both Malcolm Butler and Amari Hooker tied with team highs in interceptions that season, and Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons being monsters in the pass rush that year. That being said, though, everything was looking up for the Tennessee Titans. They frankly could only go up from here. In 2021, Tennessee finished as the 1 seed, despite Ryan Tannehill coming back down to earth a little bit after 2 monster years with 3,000 yards, 21 touchdowns to 4 INTs. Derrick Henry still put up very good numbers despite missing the tail end of the season with a foot injury. And even A.J. Brown had a down year, not cracking 1,000 yards, but only playing in 13 games that year. The Titans ended up losing to the Bengals in the divisional round, who would eventually make the Super Bowl that year. All in all, this year was kind of disappointing for Tennessee. A lot of injuries on both sides of the ball, and a lot of their star players didn't finish out most of the season and play a lot of the games, thus their numbers were not as good as the last 2 years. But going into 2022, it would be a massive season for the Tennessee Titans, and that all started in the offseason. During that offseason, many big-name receivers began receiving massive contracts with big paydays, locking them up to deals stick with their respective clubs as number one wideout. That being said, you saw a lot of number one receivers that were up for extensions or heading towards contract extensions get paid. And that being said, A.J. Brown was heading up for an extension and was vocal with wanting to get paid with a hefty deal to stay in Tennessee. Except though, the Titans had other plans, failing and not wanting to pay Brown a massive sum for his contributions to winning football in the Music City. With cap space tight, the Titans did something that would change their trajectory instantly.
Giving us the details.
Let's go.
How about this trade that just went down?
Wow, we thought it was going to be Deebo Samuel. Turns out A.J. Brown stole the show here.
Yeah, the Eagles getting A.J. Brown.
Wow.
Tennessee, the 18th overall pick.
Oh my God! Do you see that? Do you see that?
A.J. Brown?
They traded for A.J. Brown?
Don, get out of the way! Get out of the way!
For a first and a third. Ain't no way.
The Eagles are trading for A.J. Brown.
Yeah, the Titans traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles for the number 18th overall pick in the 2022 draft and the 101st pick in the 2022 draft. The Titans then drafted Brown's replacement in Treylon Burks directly after this trade, and many felt like Burks would be the guy to replace Brown's production over time. If this trade worked for Tennessee, they would have been seen as the geniuses in this trade. The thing is, though, it didn't. The Titans went 7-10 that season and finished second in the AFC South. Ryan Tannehill did not have a great year, frankly below average than his last, but he also missed time with an ankle injury that season, leaving quarterback duties to rookie Malik Willis and journeyman Josh Dobbs, who started his first game for the Titans days after being signed. Despite that, Derrick Henry did Derrick Henry things and rushed for over 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns. But when it came to pass catchers, though, yeah, you're seeing that right. No receiver went over 1,000 yards, and no receiver had more than 3 touchdowns. The leading receiving touchdown leader was a running back, Dontrell Hilliard, who had 4. He didn't even rush to over 500 yards or receive for over 500 yards that year. And Burks, you might be asking yourself, only scored 1 touchdown, which came off a Derrick Henry fumble in the end zone, and he only recorded 444 yards in reception. Ultimately, Burks did show flashes of his talent, but he didn't live up to anything near the expectations put on him pretty unfairly by this trade. While A.J. Brown, on the other hand, put up his best numbers receiving, a career high in yards and equaling his career high in touchdowns with 11, as well as putting 2 touchdowns and over 119 yards against the Titans in Week 12, really rubbing salt into the wound. Ultimately, it came out later that season that Vrabel never wanted to trade A.J. Brown, and that it was mainly on GM John Robinson, who was ultimately fired during that season by the ownership. All in all, this was a very disappointing season for the Titans, being that they had been the 1 seed last year. The A.J. Brown trade really put a giant cannon-sized hole in the ship, which made them sink. And the main problem was they were sinking fast, and in 2023, we saw it officially hit rock bottom. This brings us up to modern day, where the Titans have gone through an even rougher season than before. In 2023, the Titans finished 6-11 and bottom of the AFC South, the worst season by record under Vrabel as head coach. It was a quarterback carousel at the quarterback position for the Titans. Initially, Ryan Tannehill started the year as the number 1, but after 8 games, started another battle with injury. For Tannehill, he ultimately finished the season with only 10 games played, over 1,600 yards, but only 4 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. The Titans shifted to another battle at quarterback, this time between sophomore Malik Willis and rookie quarterback Will Levis, who they dropped in the 2nd round out of Kentucky. Ultimately, Levis gave the Titans somewhat of a spark that they needed to continue winning games and play well, and initially got the nod as the starter for the rest of the season. Levis ended his rookie year for over 1,800 passing yards, 8 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Except he got hurt in the last 3 games of the season and didn't really play the rest of the year. But his play was good enough to get a Titans receiver over 1,000 yards in DeAndre Hopkins, who they signed in free agency after he was cut by the Cardinals. This was the first time any receiver had gone over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns since A.J. Brown was traded. Derrick Henry had another productive year as he entered what seemed to be his final year as a Titan with over 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. Other than that, though, there was not a lot of bright spots on this team. No other receiver besides Hopkins had more than 700 yards, and Treylon Burks had even more of a sophomore slump, battling with injury, only playing 11 games, only had 221 yards on the season and 0 touchdowns, which is only 7 more yards than running back Derrick Henry in the receiving game. Ultimately, if you were to look at the 2023 season for the Titans, as I just painted out for you, you could somewhat, and I mean this is slightly somewhat, try and make the narrative fit on why Mike Vrabel was fired. But I say somewhat, because ultimately besides the last 2 years, this team has been extremely successful. I think this article by Yahoo Sports puts it the best after starting out with these quotes from sources across the NFL on their reaction to the news of Vrabel being fired. This paragraph, I think, strikes volume as to why this decision by ownership is a massive mistake for the franchise. This is what happens when a team fires a head coach who is nearly universally respected across the league. A coach who led that team to an AFC championship game and 2 division titles in 6 years, despite never having a high-caliber quarterback in a league defined by a high-caliber quarterback. A defensive wizard who won NFL Coach of the Year after an injury-riddled 2021 campaign that saw the Titans roster and an NFL record 91 players. And lest we forget, a coach who was ultimately undercut by former general manager John Robin's personnel mistakes, which gradually edged swaths of the Tennessee depth chart off a cliff. I mean, I was kind of shocked when I heard the news that Mike Vrabel was fired. When I started hearing the rumors that the Tennessee Titans were thinking of parting ways with Mike Vrabel, I was in a car with my dad coming home when he mentioned that he had heard that there were rumors floating around that Mike Vrabel would be let go or fired the day before he was. And I thought to myself, no way would the Titans go through with something like that. Mike Vrabel's been a good coach, and yeah, they've sucked, but I mean, really, it's been since the A.J. Brown trade that sunk this team into a really bad state. So when my phone was blowing up on Twitter from all the notifications from various different NFL sources, my jaw dropped to the floor because I couldn't believe that the Tennessee Titans would pull the trigger on this. The magnitude of this move is ginormous, frankly, because it's like betting $1 million on terrible odds. Head coaches do not just grow on trees, despite numerous young, exciting, shiny new head coaches that come into shop windows each season. And frankly, I don't think there's anyone that comes close to the magnitude of coach that Vrabel is. That being said, I know exactly what's next for him. He's going to be coaching next season, no matter what. He will have a job. He will be coaching a team for the first year next season. Whether it's the Patriots, because as of recording this, they've just fired Bill Belichick, which we all saw coming, or the Commanders, or the Chargers, or anyone looking for a head coach right now. Vrabel will 100% be top of the list for teams looking for a guy to guide their franchise in the right direction. For Tennessee, this is exactly like the boneheaded trade that ultimately made them make this decision. Except you're not getting a first-round pick in this case. The ownership has the opportunity to look like a genius if this worked, but they also have the opportunity to sink this team into even more position than they already are. An aging team with players some damn near past their prime. And to think, the guy who would somehow claw and fight his way to get you out of the storm won't be in the building is borderline criminal. It's awful. It's terrible. It's the type of decision that makes an average NFL fan feel like a GM or owner because it's a decision no one would make in their right mind. It's almost as if the Chiefs would fire Andy Reid for all the dropped passes this season. Or it's as if the Rams fired Sean McVay last year after winning the Super Bowl and having a very down year. All I know is if the Titans become a laughingstock for the NFL, there was no one else to blame but ownership. If you've learned anything in the ownership across all sports, not just the NFL, you don't want to make boneheaded decisions. You're allowed one, but you definitely don't want your fans hating you for the boneheaded decisions, because that just makes everything worse. If the Titans pull this off and turn around, then great, good, we move on and we forget about it. On to the next. But one thing is for certain here, the odds are not in their favor to win this, and the backlash and honestly everything has been big against the Titans' decision here. I do know one thing for certain though. I think the Tennessee Titans have just made a massive mistake that could cost them their future.